Let me ask you something. How many times have you tried to quit porn? 10, 50, 100, 1,000, maybe more times than you can actually count? And how many of those times looked exactly the same? The doubling down on willpower and discipline, thinking that this time was finally going to be the time where that promise that I made to myself that this would be the last time would actually come true. How many of those times looked like some form of habit optimization, like Andrew Huberman's wet dream, where you are looking at the sunlight within 10 minutes of waking up and perfectly timing every single hour of your day, from your meals to your exercise to your bedtime to your melatonin, so that you can perfectly schedule pornography out of your life? How many times did it look like adding blockers that you only found ways around days or weeks later? You start taking cold showers, you fill your schedule with productive stuff, and you probably build a decent streak of freedom. Days, weeks, maybe even a couple months without pornography. And you start feeling good. Like, wow, maybe I just solved the problem. But then something strange happens. One night, days, weeks, or months later, maybe you were stressed. Maybe you were lonely. Maybe you just went through a rejection of some kind. Or most likely, maybe, nothing seemed to be going on at all for reasons unbeknownst to you. Maybe Mercury was in retrograde, or you were just up bored one night. Dr. Jekyll suddenly turns into Mr. Hyde, and you suddenly find yourself with the overwhelming craving to return to pornography. Suddenly running counter to all of your best reasons to stay sober, and that passion, that anger that you had to get into stay sober just weeks or months earlier is seemingly swept aside by the one stupid thought that pornography would once again be a good idea. And then you're sitting there afterwards just wondering how this all could have happened again. Why you keep ending up here despite everything that you try. I spent over 12 years in that cycle. And the answer to this question, paradoxically, turns out that it has nothing to do with trying harder. If you're new here, my name is Nate O'Neill, and I help men break free from pornography for good. I struggled with this personally for over 12 years and spent over 4.5 years painstakingly piecing together a comprehensive, holistic, and effective solution to this problem. If you've been trying to quit this problem unsuccessfully, using things like generic self-improvement or no-fap advice, forums online, therapy and counseling, or even dedicated support groups, and you are still stuck, you are in the right place. In this video, I'm gonna show you something I'm very, very excited about. I'm gonna walk you through a framework that absolutely changed my life and is a central framework that I use inside of all of the coaching work that I do today. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why your past attempts kept failing and why it had absolutely nothing to do with discipline, willpower, or effort. You're going to be able to see the specific layer, the specific aspect of what recovering from this problem actually looks like, where you are actually stuck. And finally, you will know what going deeper to address the roots of this problem actually looks like, instead of just having people tell you that that's what you're supposed to do. But before we jump in, I need to give you some quick context on the framework that we're about to explore in this workshop. It's called the 3 circles. Now, the 3 circles is a tool used across multiple recovery and therapeutic methodologies that gives you a clear map of behavior change. It's a very simple tool, like deceptively simple, as you will see. It shows you essentially where your danger zones are, what makes you vulnerable to a behavior you're trying to change, and what actually pulls you forward towards real freedom. It answers the question, how do I know if I am moving towards a behavior I'm trying to change or away from it? And additionally, what sequences of things, actions, feelings, circumstances connect in a way that leads me back to the behavior that I'm trying to stop doing? So it's a very, very simple thing. And this is how it works. If you can imagine for a moment that you are a bird flying over the top of a volcano and you are looking down on it from the top, you will see something that looks like 3 concentric circles with a lava pool in the center, a jagged crater just outside of that, and then the slopes of the volcano taking you naturally away from the crater in the lava on the inside. This is the picture or the image of the three circles. It looks like a target or a bullseye. Now, brief explanation of what the three circles actually are, which you can kind of get from the volcano analogy. The inner circle, the innermost circle, are the addictive, destructive behaviors that we are trying to stop. The behaviors where instant contact means pain or destruction. For most of us, these inner circle behaviors, which define our sobriety, which define our bottom lines in recovery from an addiction, is the addiction. If you're an alcoholic, it's like alcohol. That's the thing. I don't do that. That's what I'm trying to recover from. For most of us, it's pornography and masturbation. Surrounding that are the treacherous inner slopes. This is the middle circle, so-called. These are where the warning signs, the triggers, the slippery slope behaviors that make you vulnerable lie. Staying up too late, isolating, doom scrolling on Instagram for 5 hours late into the night, getting rejected. The list goes on. These are the things that we experience or feel or choose that make the ground unstable, where one wrong step can send us tumbling down a cascade into the lava at the center. But beyond that, when we get over the crater rim of the volcano, is the outer slopes. This is the outer circle, where if you've watched any of my previous videos, this is where positive sobriety lives. This is the actions, the things that we do that provide genuine connection, enrichment, fulfillment, where by engaging with them, they naturally pull us away from the interior danger zone of the volcano. That's the basic structure. And on its own, it provides a really powerful tool. But what I began to realize in my own recovery journey is that what I just laid out for you is essentially a very practical look at the three circles as a tool, connecting things like emotions, behaviors, things that we can choose to do, things that we know we need to avoid, etc., etc. It provides a useful map, but it's very incomplete if we only stay at this level. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see guys making in recovery from pornography addiction, is they never graduate to anything beyond behavior swapping. They start to realize like, oh, I need to fill my life with better things. And then they do this behavior swapping thing, and that's the deepest into their recovery they ever go. And they never actually address the deeper roots, which I'm about to show you. The three circles actually gives us a really, really powerful and profound way to access. And the way that I do that inside of my program is by showing the guys that I work with that the three circles has 5 layers going deeper. So imagine like 5 layers of a cake, right? It's all circles when you look at it from the top, but if you look at it from the side, you can see the chocolate and the icing, so on and so forth. We need to start seeing the deeper layers, and the three circles is something which allows us to do that in a really coherent and powerful and beautiful and profound way, dare I say. So now with the contextual foundation of understanding this workshop in place, what you're about to watch is a recording from a small group coaching call I had with the men inside of my program, Orbital Recovery. Orbital Recovery is a science-backed, integrative, holistic men's personal development program designed to help you quit porn, conquer lust, and become the man you were meant to be, to live up to your potential in all areas of life. So before we jump in, if you are struggling with porn and you are ready to actually address the roots, go to the link in the description below and book a free consultation call with me. All right, without further ado, let's get into it.
Okay, so yeah, in terms of kind of general summary of the changes that I made, a lot of what inspired this was, as I've worked with people over the last however many years it's been at there, like 3-4 years now, and the years that I've spent in recovery in my own journey, time and time again, like I see people who get to like a different part of their recovery and then something takes them out. Or it was something in my recovery journey where I went far, but it wasn't far enough, and something took me out. And there seems to be this like pattern between people will make progress and then they stagnate, and then they don't seem to be able to push past like the obstacle at hand. And as I've like worked with people and I've identified like, okay, so when this particular challenge comes up, like this is how we deal with it, but it's So for example, maybe it's like somebody's dealing with self-sabotage and like deep inner conflict. And I'm like, okay, so the model that's most effective for helping people with that is this internal family systems model. But then somebody else is having this problem over here in like their dating life, or we do some workshops and we're talking about like king, warrior, magician, lover, and these developmental archetypes and healing family of origin wounds. And it's like this different perspective. It's this different slice on the journey of recovery that is uniquely helpful. It's not that it's incompatible with the IFS work. It's more like it shakes hands, but it's different. Like there's stuff that you can get to with the family of origins and archetypal content, the meaning and purpose type stuff that you can't get to with the IFS and vice versa. And so over time, I think what this led to for me was this big kind of synthesis moment where I realized that all of this stuff fits perfectly into our model of the three circles, and every single one of them shakes hands and progressively steps deeper into the roots of our addiction and recovery. And so that's what these 5 layers are meant to be, like the simplest way that I can take you guys from the surface, the most surface level, to the deepest aspect of recovery in a systematic, clear way, like step by step layered way. And the kind of image that I had in my mind when I was creating this, I don't know if you guys have seen National Treasure with Nick Cage. Have you guys both seen that movie?
Nah, but go on.
Oh, dude, you guys are missing out. I have a core life memory related to that movie, but it's hilarious. It's like a decent movie, but then there's these parts of it that just became so meme worthy. It's where Nick Cage steals the Declaration of Independence. But anyway, there's this part where they take the Declaration of Independence, and apparently there's like a hidden map on the backside, and they have to get these like special glasses from like Ben Franklin to be able to read the map on the back, and it has like 6 different colored lenses on it. And so they put on the glasses, and like it'll like if you have one color in front of your eyes, it like lets you see one part of the image, and then they put down like the blue layer, and then they can see a bigger, like more of the image, and so on and so forth. And you have to like mess with the layers of optics in front of your eyes to like bring out the map. That's sort of the image that I had in mind when looking at this, that each layer of the 3 circles will allow you to see certain things in your recovery, but we have to get wise about how to identify which layer actually allows us to see a problem, because not all of them do, and that's really important to know. Yeah, I mean, at a glance, right, at a high level, right, what are the 5 layers that we have, right? One, I would say, is the practical layer. This is the most surface level, and it answers the question for us of just what is happening, right? This is our volcano metaphor of the 3 circles: the lava at the center, the slippery slope in the middle circle, and then the stuff that moves us away from the interior crater and danger zone in the form of our outer circle. Right. And this is where we begin to identify patterns of behavior, emotions, actions, consequences of actions, which push us towards addiction or which take us away from addiction, right? So very practical, like in my middle circle, right? If I'm tired, if I have open access to content, like my blockers are not working, if I'm stressed out, if I'm anxious, if I'm feeling bored, without purpose, without meaning, if I feel rejected, if I self-sabotage by staying up too late and destroying my sleep or eating a bunch of junk food, then I feel terrible. And then I'm generating all this negative emotion that my addiction comes in to numb out. And then the outer circle is like, oh, when I do these things that actually make me feel better, like I exercise, I stay consistent with my sleep, I socialize with, both with friends and then people in recovery, and I stay connected, and I take care of my health, and I clean up my room and my house so I feel like I'm living in like a kind of ordered environment, right? All of these things we start to notice, like, oh, these take me away from addiction. So this layer of recovery, this very practical layer, right? It's super actionable. It gives us a very clear cut, like this is the thing to do. And it gives us choice, right? So for the first time, we come out of this blur of like just living life on autopilot and allowing our feelings to dictate our decisions. Like, I feel like going to get fast food, so I'm just going to go do it. Now we have this awareness of like, oh no, that actually kicks off this cascade of I eat it, then I don't sleep as good, then I'm like inflamed and I feel bad the next day, I have brain fog, and then I'm not focusing, and now I feel disconnected and, whatever. And then boom, I'm acting out and watching porn. So we can start to see the connection between what seems like a small decision and a larger pattern, right? So we get choice now where we can start to say, oh, I don't want to engage in my middle circle and I want to start engaging in my outer circle. So that's like layer one, right? The problem with this, let me think about this for a moment in terms of how I want to go, which layers do I go? I'll stick with we'll go down here. Okay. Yeah. So the problem, if this is all you do, it inevitably becomes behavior swapping without real reason. Like, I'm doing things because I'm supposed to, or I feel like I should, or it's good for me, but it's disconnected from an understanding of my actual needs as a person. And so it turns into like a second kind of prison. It's like a habit optimization, rigid schedule, and like willpower and discipline based strategy of let me just keep myself busy and distract myself with positive things and mistake that for recovery. So we want to avoid falling into this prison of rigidity. We want to avoid falling into a trap where recovery becomes a fragile routine that has to be maintained over time. And we have to stay distracted by just like habit maxing our outer circle. And then there's no connection to the deeper roots underneath, right? So that's the limitation. It grants us agency and choice. It's hyper practical, but it doesn't necessarily connect to something deeper. Okay, so the next layer of the three circles then is going to be the needs-based layer. Right. And this is where we begin to actually discover the why behind this, like certain behaviors that we have. We begin to discover, right, that emotions are not random noise in our life. They are signals from parts of us that are trying to get needs met, right? When I have an unmet need, that manifests in my lived experience as negative emotion. Negative emotion is something inside of me telling me like, yo, bro, something's got to change. Like something's wrong. You need to change. That is the purpose of negative emotion. It's not random, right? If I eat horrible food and then I feel like shit, that's my body telling me like, hey, dude, you got to change, right? If I do something and I feel good, like I connect with people and then I feel better, that's my body telling me like, hey, you met a need that you have. The problem when it comes to something like addiction or self-sabotaging mechanisms is they spoof this emotional GPS that we have. They are things that we engage with, which give us the positive emotion or part of the positive emotion that would have come from genuinely meeting a need when we're not able to meet it in a genuine way, right? So porn gives us the illusion of intimacy, connection, the emotional regulation and soothing that can happen during genuine intimacy, but it's not actually the thing in and of itself, right? It's a spoof of this emotional GPS. And in the long run actually undermines our ability to get that need met in an authentic way. So this training, I give you guys the sailboat model, which we talked a little bit about yesterday. The sailboat is a model for you in understanding your needs. That the whole of the ship, the bottom part of the ship is composed of your foundational needs for safety, connection, and self-esteem, right? And inside the training, these get broken down in more depth. And then the sail of your ship is your higher level needs, right? This is exploration, love, purpose, transcendence, spirituality, meaning and purpose, right? All of that kind of stuff. The problem is we can't neglect the whole to focus on the sails, and also vice versa, right? This model works because both things rely on each other and they work together, and you don't graduate from one thing permanently to go on to the other, right? Like your safety needs involves a lot of like taking care of yourself physically. So food, sleep, shelter, right? That kind of stuff. You can't suddenly just like stop feeding yourself, right? Or like pretty soon your physical needs for safety are going to go unmet, and that's going to dominate your experience, right? The only thing I can think about is how hungry I am because I have a primary need that's unmet and it's going to crowd out everything else. So we have to keep working on maintaining the whole of the ship so we float, right? So our health, our safety, our baseline levels of connection, making sure that we're doing things that are at least keeping our self-esteem stable and not constantly undermining our own efforts. right? And then once we can float, now we can worry about the sail and how we're going to traverse the ocean of life, right? But kind of going in the other direction, if all we do is focus on safety needs, we're a boat that floats but goes nowhere. So we can end up in a life where it's like, I'm doing all the right things in order for me to like kind of stay or become a functional, decently healthy person, but my life just feels empty still. I don't feel like I'm going anywhere of like importance to me. My life just feels like a checklist of things that I'm doing, but I'm not really making any meaningful progress anywhere. I'm a boat that floats, but the sails are not there, right? So both things have to be worked on. We first want to be a boat that floats, and then we want to be a boat that can go somewhere, right? So that's the model here that I introduce you guys to, right? And it connects you guys this idea that a lot of the middle circle patterns of behavior that you guys identified in that first layer, right? They are in your middle circle by definition because they're a behavior pattern that abandons your needs or a need or a series of needs in a systematic way. And then right, what I said earlier is that when a need gets abandoned, that's what generates negative emotion. So, excuse me, stepping through this, right? If you isolate, you abandon your need for connection, you generate loneliness and shame as the output, right? If you engage in procrastination, you abandon needs for purpose and self-esteem. And then the negative emotion that's created when those needs are abandoned is anxiety, self-contempt, etc., stress. If you sleep poorly, you're abandoning your safety need. And the negative emotion that gets generated are exhaustion, irritability, again, stress, right? So on and so forth, right? These middle circle patterns are not random. They're not just like random bad habits that we engage in. They are actively abandoning a need. And that is why our addiction then comes in to be the pseudo need meter, right? It comes in as the thing which approximates the meeting of that need that we are currently abandoning, right? So pornography, sex, obviously, it's a super powerful way to discharge negative emotion. It's like a universal numbing agent. So when we isolate and feel lonely and ashamed, boom, pornography comes in to provide a simulation of connection and a relief from the pain of loneliness. If we are procrastinating and we're disconnected from purpose and self-esteem, boom, pornography gives us an illusion of being chosen and engaging in one of the most worthwhile endeavors of life and feeling alive, if only for a few moments. If we are sleeping poorly and we feel super stressed out and exhausted, pornography and orgasm and sex are a great way to discharge stress from our nervous system, right? To meet our need for safety, rest, and recovery, right? So this is how our pornography addiction over time or sex addiction has come in to be the thing that's meeting all the needs that we're systematically abandoning. And that's the relationship between our middle and inner circle. The outer circle is stuff that actually meets our needs. That's why it works. And so when we build an effective outer circle where it's actually connected to real needs that we have, our outer circle never becomes this prison of stupid shit that we feel like we have to do out of this perspective of like habit optimization. I'm not building a routine of 27 things that I'm supposed to do every single week just because. I only do the things that help me to meet the genuine needs that I have. And thus the result is that my life actually feels better. Like my whole life is marked by just more positive emotion because my needs are actually getting met. And I don't have to engage in anything that doesn't directly connect to meeting a need that I have. So when we connect our recovery to our needs, recovery simplifies a lot. It stops being overwhelming. But then we have a problem, right? Why don't we stop here? It is because when we identify our needs, it tells us the why behind what we're doing. But the problem is that we oftentimes will have needs that are in competition with each other. And so they're connected to, we understand the why, but not the who behind the scene. For example, maybe there's a part of you who feels like your need for connection and intimacy is not being met. And so that part of you wants to go out and seek a dating life, romantic relationships, etc. And then there's another part of you who feels like its safety need is being utterly abandoned by you putting yourself in a position where you could get rejected or abandoned. And so those two parts of you are now going to go to war with each other. One part of you is going to seek the need for connection, while the other part of you is going to prevent it at all costs to keep you safe. So this is where I see people in recovery who can like, they get all the self-awareness, they're making intentional decisions about like what they do in their outer circle, their middle circle, right? They get it. They're engaging in efforts to meet their needs, but then they chronically self-sabotage and like cut themselves off at the knees and just can't explain why. Like they know what need needs to be met, and yet when the rubber hits the road, they can't do it. This is the guy who cannot go say hi to a girl. He knows that he has a need for connection that's going unmet, but he goes out to talk to girls and he like chokes. He can't do it, right? It's that kind of experience. And so until we begin to work with the parts layer, and this is where the IFS and internal family systems comes in, we will forever be the victim of internal conflict. And these parts of us that have that are connected to different needs that we are not that we're not engaged with or connected with in a way that can resolve the conflict and allow us to like actually move forward. We stay stuck in these sort of I think the language I use in here is change resistant middle circle patterns. It's like I've identified it, I know what it is, I know the damage it causes, I know the real need that needs to be met, and yet a year, 2 years later, I'm still doing the same shit. Why? It's because you have parts inside of you that are in conflict. And until we deconflict our inner world, no progress is going to be made, right? We're at a stalemate. It's like World War I inside of us, right? The front's not moving and it's been 4 years. Okay, so the challenge here is, and I know this has been a lot, so I'll kind of pause. I'll pause here after this. But the challenge here is that the internal work that we do with internal family systems allows us to heal internal conflict, offload trauma, discharge the negative emotion and fear associated with taking certain actions to meet certain needs. But the problem is that doesn't necessarily give you the capacity to actually meet those needs, right? Like I use this analogy in the training of healing from like a broken ankle or say you broke your leg, right? So you were training, you broke your leg, you go in, you got the surgery, they fixed and healed the bone, but then after you get the cast off, all of the muscle around that injury is just atrophy, right? So the bone is now capable of sustaining like, some kind of athletic load, right? The bone could, in theory, it's healed enough, right, to allow you to go run again. But guess what? It's like you try to go run just out of getting a cast, like you can't do it because you have a developmental capacity, a strength that hasn't been developed to allow you to actually do it, right? So the IFS stuff sort of heals you on the horizontal direction. The next layer that we have to go into is the developmental, which is the vertical of helping you to develop the capacity to meet the need. And this is a lot about growing up, right? Maturing psychologically, healing family of origin wounds, developing our archetypal capacities and all that stuff. So I know this has been, just a summary, but it's kind of been a lot. And we just dove into probably the newest layer here. Do you guys have any comments or questions on what we've covered so far?
I got one. Sorry, I'm running across the street right now. But so what you said makes sense and it makes me realize why you have to be careful how you self-sabotage, because that's you subconsciously, you didn't get a need met. And that's why your drive for porn comes up. But my question is like, why is it so hard to find out what needs you're specifically trying to meet? Because sometimes it feels like I just watch porn just to watch it. But I know that's not the case. But why can't I easily tell what need I'm trying to meet?
I think a part of it is it's the aftermath and consequences of addiction, but also it's a sign of a capacity that's just never been developed, right? Most men in our culture in general are very disconnected from their own emotions, and they have very low emotional literacy. Meaning, and again, this isn't like to shame you or anything, but if we were never taught how to feel our own bodies, to understand like, oh, this thing that I'm feeling in my chest right now is anxiety, and what am I anxious about? And then we discover like, oh my gosh, I'm anxious about, I don't know, these bills that I have at the end of the month that I've been procrastinating even looking at. If we lack that fundamental capacity to just identify an emotion and investigate it a little bit to figure out what it's connected to, all of our emotions just seem like random noise. Or, right, when we're in active addiction and we're constantly acting out, watching porn, doing other things that numb us, that disconnect us from our emotions, it actually becomes impossible to tell what the heck is going on. And that's the purpose of the addiction, right? It's like this global numbing effect that covers everything. It numbs and disconnects us from all of our emotions, in which case it is super, super challenging, if not impossible, to understand like, what is it that I feel? But again, that's actually the purpose of the addiction. The underlying stuff is so challenging or painful, or we're so lacking in our ability and our tools to meet the need, that a firefighter in the form of our addiction has come in with a fire extinguisher and just covered the entire house in firefighting foam, right? So nothing is visible anymore. That's what the addiction's doing, right? So if we're disconnected from our emotions after watching porn or acting out addictively, that's like a W in our addictions, win-loss table. It's doing exactly what it intended to do and what it needed to do. And this is why, Liv, yesterday when I was talking about how there can be no true recovery if we never get sober. We cannot heal what we cannot feel. As long as we continue to engage in acting out, we're numbing all of the emotions that would then grant us the capacity to be able to identify what are my needs? What are these emotions that I'm feeling? What are they connected to? I have to be able to feel that stuff in order to undergo that process. So that's again why we have to establish a baseline reduction in the use of pornography, and we have to get we have to create enough space of abstinence for us to begin feeling our emotions again. And then we have to undergo this process of building emotional literacy, right? Of being able to identify, right, again, what is it that I feel? Okay, what's underneath this? What's this connected to? What's the situation? What's the need that currently needs to be met that is not being met, right? And then in the URP and all these trainings, I give you guys very simplistic models to help you, like the first stepping stone of the halt the effing BS thing, right? Am I hungry? Am I angry or anxious? Am I lonely? Am I tired? Am I afraid? Am I stressed? Am I feeling shame? Right? That's halt the effing BS. If I'm feeling those things, then it helps me I'm feeling something. I look at it through this lens of halt the effing BS, and then I can identify oh, it's stress, or oh, it's boredom. Oh, I left that out. That's the B in BS. I'm bored. Okay, so if I'm bored, what does that indicate is the underlying need that is going unmet? It's probably purpose, right? In that direction. I don't feel alive, and I don't feel like there's anything worth doing in my life in this moment. I have nothing good to do. And so I'm bored. Well, what could I do in order to fill this with something different? Now that I recognize I'm bored, could I look in my outer circle for something that seems seems more appealing to me than potentially acting out and watching porn right now? What if it's okay, maybe it's later at night. There's nobody I can hang out with, people's phones, whatever. Maybe I make a call. Somebody answers, then I'm done. What if I go try to find an Oscar-winning movie to watch? Would that be a better use of my time than sitting here doom scrolling on my phone or watching porn, right? So maybe that meets my need for the next 3 hours of being bored. I'm no longer bored, right? It's super basic, but that's the process of being able to identify this stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I see how it all connects now. I kind of see the model you're talking about how our nervous system's trying to protect us. We keep feeling these negative emotions. Your nervous system wants to protect you. You're so deep into the addiction, and then put that on just being a man, having that emotional illiteracy. So you don't know what the fuck why you're doing the shit you do, and then you just keep doing it. And then your nervous system doesn't want to stop it because it's the only thing that you seem to do that gets you to numb it, even if only temporarily. So I see what you mean. You got to wean yourself off the addiction, and then you got to get that emotional literacy, and then you'll start to see the needs that need to be met. And then you'll have an idea of how to meet said needs.
Yeah. And to go to training module 1 here for a moment, right? This is exactly what the URP is trying to help us to do, right? So if I go to the steps that you're given in the URP down here, let's go to the short version. Where is it? Oh, okay, that's fine. Right. So these steps that I take you guys through, right? The recognition, right? I actually need to up this to halt the effing BS. So that's a better one. But right, simply, can you recognize what you're feeling in this moment, right? Use the halt the effing BS assessment. Are you hungry? Are you angry? And I'm going to change this a little bit because I think the halt the effing BS is better than what I had here the first time, right? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, anxious, bored, ashamed, afraid. Like, are you one of those things? Okay. Yep. It's fear. I'm feeling fear. That's what's going on. Or let's say like anxiety, that one is more common, right? Can you then accept and make room for the emotion that you're feeling, right? It's okay for me to feel anxious. I don't have to make this anxiety go away because it's not an enemy. It's just something that's here trying to tell me that something's wrong. I can make space for this emotion that is trying to deliver valuable information to me. So I stop the resistance against it, right? Then can I defuse from it, right? Understanding that this emotion and who I am are not one and the same thing. This emotion is giving me data, but it may not be encouraging me to do the right thing. So if I feel anxious and I feel an urge to go watch porn, right, I can thank that part of me for telling me something's wrong and proposing a solution, but I can recognize that what it's telling me is not going to be helpful. This won't actually meet the underlying need. Right. So this creates a separation, a healthy separation between the emotion we're feeling and its recommended action and who we are. This is the diffusion step, right? We want to unhook from our emotions so we stop getting pulled around like a marionette by our own emotions all the time, where I feel something and I do something and the whole process is unconscious, right? Then we want to connect to values instead, right? Can you look at and identify the underlying need? If I'm feeling anxious, what am I feeling anxious about? A conversation that I know that I need to have that I don't want to have. Okay. So I'm anxious about looking forward to this conversation. Like pornography is something that could relieve the anxiety that I'm feeling temporarily, but it's not going to have the conversation for me. Like there's no amount of jerking off that has this conversation. Like those don't connect in any meaningful way. So it's not actually going to resolve the thing that is causing the distress. So if I get out of this idea of like porn is good, porn is bad, and I just look at it from a practical perspective, does porn actually solve the problem? No. So I would prefer to do something that actually solves the problem, which would be having the conversation or getting help. And like maybe what I'm anxious about is it's not just the conversation, but it's like I don't even know what to say to this person. Okay, what could I do that would help me to get to the point where I could have the conversation? What if I reach out to somebody who I respect, who I've had a history of feeling like they're pretty good at these kind of conversations, and I ask them for help? Would that make me actually feel better about having the conversation? Yes. Okay, so my preferred response, what would be in alignment with my values and helping me to become the kind of guy that I want to be, is to actually reach out for help, ask for advice and suggestions on how to have this conversation, and then go actually have the conversation. Now I'm actually meeting the need. And I'll paradoxically will probably feel that anxious part of me is starting to like soften. The anxiety probably wouldn't go away until, after you had the conversation itself, but getting help and getting a plan is going to make the conversation feel way less overwhelming and possible, right? So then we actually want to take the action and then reward ourselves for doing the right thing, right? So I want to step through this a little bit, in particular, Lib, for like these trainings that I give you guys. And again, to reinforce what we talked about yesterday of like, if you haven't locked down the foundations and the basics, everything that we're trying to do later on is like putting the cart before the horse, right? You're trying to set your sails before you've even built a boat that floats. All the stuff that I'm giving you guys, especially in training module 1, as you can see, right, it's like, what did we just go through? We went through this like introductory level process of helping you to become aware of your emotions, right? Which is your question, how do I do it? Then actually go through a process of processing your emotion in a values aligned way that actually meets an underlying need, right? So from the beginning, I have you guys begin to engage in this process that you don't actually even understand the reasons why until you get to training module 3. So again, it's like if you skip the beginning, you're skipping what is essential for the later parts of the course to even be effective. So I would also emphasize that if you haven't gone through the URP, if you're not practicing it in your life, the thing to do is to go back to these parts of the course that you haven't put into practice and put them into practice, because they're going to help. right? I don't mean for me this to be like a dog pile, but I do mean for it to be kind of like a tough love because I care about you. If you had been putting this into practice, right? If you had been putting the URP into practice regularly, you would have never just asked me the question of how do I understand what I feel? Does that make sense? Like, do you see how the process in the URP is the answer to that question?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So I really just want to emphasize like the stuff that I give you guys in the course is not like random. There's a depth to recovery that we cannot get to if all we're doing is having connection calls with people and showing up in a community, right? All that stuff is essential, but where am I going to be like, where are you going to have a thorough step-by-step like process of learning a new skill if you skip the course? Like you're just going to miss stuff that could have changed your life a year ago had you gone through it, or 6 months ago, or like wherever, right? So just remember, right, that like the course and the material is here for a purpose. It's not random. I put this stuff here because it solves serious problems in your recovery that if they don't get solved, will come up and bite you in the ass 6, 8, 12 months from now. And then you'll discover why I created this program, right? Like you will turn into me before I created this program, which is reinventing the wheel by yourself painfully as you embark on a journey of recovery without these skills, and then having to encounter some kind of relapse or pain or catastrophe that forces you to learn how to deal with it differently. And then you discover, oh, that was actually exactly what Nate went through 5 years ago, which is why he put this training in the course here. But yeah, looking at the time here, we only got a couple more minutes. So I'll kind of finish this off here. The developmental layer, right, as I mentioned, is about building capacity, right? It's about growing into who you could be, building the skills, the ability, the postures, the frames, like all the stuff that's necessary for you to be the man that you could be, and that many of your goals that you have will require you to be. This is a process of spiritual reparenting, of becoming the adult that we needed as kids, but never had. That's this layer, right? This solves some really important problems. Like I said, if you're capable of meeting a need in terms of like potential, like I could potentially be in a relationship, like I have a pulse, I've worked on healing my trauma, like I'm alive and capable of it. But yet when I go out to try to do it, I like don't know what to say. I can't be charismatic, blah, blah, blah. It's like there's a capacity deficit. That's what we need to fix. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to experience the pain of not being able to create the outcomes in our life that we want to create. And that in and of itself will inevitably drive us back to relapse. Or as we try to, say, for example, go out and get into relationships, the lack of capacity will result in rejection, right? Which then takes us back to like the internal family systems layer, where now there's going to be a part of us that's going to be constantly angry and upset and hurt because it feels like you don't know how to help. It doesn't trust you anymore, right? So we have to build the capacity to meet a need in order for our internal world of parts to build trust. It's essential. Right. The sort of last thing here, like what's the limitation here that this layer, where does it kind of stall off? This layer can be really helpful in telling us what's missing, but it won't yet unite it into a larger vision. Like, what's it all for? Okay, I learned how to do like the king stuff and the lover, the magician, and like all this stuff. It sounds great. Yes, I feel like I feel drawn towards it or whatever, but what is the bigger picture that this is actually moving me towards? And that's where the spiritual layer comes in. And this is the place where we're actually capable. I would say it's the most powerful place for us to stand as the leaders of our life. In the archetypal language, the king stands in the spiritual layer in order to see where he needs to go and where he needs to move away from. Both of those kind of work hand in hand. Right. So this helps us to understand like the patterns of expansion and contraction, that the purpose of my life is to move towards what expands me and what energizes me, and to move away from that which depletes me and which makes my life smaller, which contracts me and takes away possibility from me, which shrinks potential, right? And addiction is the ultimate expression of a life-destroying process. It progressively narrows our life until our life revolves around two things, basically: acting out and trying to stop acting out unsuccessfully. That defines our entire life experience. That's a pretty small life, right? When your biggest problem, and and I don't mean this to be backhanded, because obviously it's a real problem. But when the biggest problem in your life is how do I stop jerking off? That doesn't feel good. Some part of us knows like my life is too small. It feels horrible to be stuck in a place where that's my biggest problem, right? So the spiritual layer tells us that anything that moves us into this like contracted pattern, like addiction, where it depletes me, it undermines my purpose, it prevents me from engaging in a larger process of life. That is the direction I have to move away from. And I want to move into expansion, right? Where I feel more energy, I'm more capable, I can feel more emotions. Right? I'm not like globally numbed out. I'm capable of a wider set of behaviors, right? The biggest problem in my life is no longer like, how do I stop jerking off? I have better problems. I have more problems actually, and they're better. My life is better for it, right? So my life gets bigger and I get more capable. I get challenged in more directions. I have to manifest more of who I am into the world, right? If all that I'm doing is sort of numbing myself and watching porn or struggling with this, the versions of myself that are active in the world are super limited. It's like the version of me that's numb and then the version of me that's taken over by craving. And that's it. Versus after months of sobriety and engaging in relationships and pursuing purpose, it's like, oh, now I get to experience like the purpose-driven version of me that has the super creative mind and came up with all these cool ideas and solved these important problems at work or with a business I'm starting. And then I have the relationship aspect where I just like completely radically changed and I experienced a version of myself that was like funny and grounded and really sexually attractive and like all this stuff, right? So the spiritual layer, it helps us to realize that this expansion and contraction, that is actually, again, from a recovery, a life, a spiritual perspective, is where we want to move towards and where we want to move away from. So it's less of like the purpose of my life is to arrive at a specific place, like to become an astronaut. It's like that's a very shallow way of looking at purpose, actually. The real purpose of my life is whatever results in the maximum expansion of who I am. That's what we want to aim towards. So it's a little bit abstract, right? Because what expands you, if you make that concrete, is going to be one, you may know some of those things right now, but you also probably don't even know what most of those things are, which is where, again, like on the spiritual element of like the ideas, right, of a higher power or God or whatever you want to call it is synonymous with the call to adventure. Like the purpose of your life is to embark on the adventure of discovering these things which expand you. This is what helps us to orient our recovery towards a larger process, right? So I think I talk about it here in the flow. Yeah, this kind of upward flow, right? How do these layers shake hands, right? The practical layer will tell us, something like this unwanted middle circle behavior keeps showing up. Like practically, I see it. I keep going and eating fast food, even though I keep telling myself not to, and it makes me feel like shit, right? Why? Well, probably because some underlying need is not being met. Okay, now we get to move into the needs-based layer. What is the need that is chronically unmet? Well, maybe I find out that like, oh man, I only seem to go to fast food restaurants late at night, and I do it way more often on like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Like, why could that be? Oh, maybe this process of like going out to a fast food restaurant and getting food that is like short-term, super pleasurable is a replacement for the fun, the pleasure, and the genuine fulfillment that I'm not getting in my life. So I replace actually having something worth doing that would give me pleasure and positive emotion in my life with junk food, because it's like a simulation of pleasure that I'm not getting in other areas. So maybe that's part of it. It's like this pursuit and like, oh, I have something to look forward to for a short period of time. And then I get this thing and then the food is so good and I get this like pleasure hit and it feels like I'm scratching an itch deep inside of me for fun, fulfillment, pleasure, and satisfaction that nothing else in my life was capable of doing. Okay, so I have this need to meet pleasure, fulfillment, etc. Why can I not meet that in my normal life? It's like, oh, well, maybe there's a part of me that won't allow it to be met, right? It's fearful of what would happen if I did go try to get this need met. Okay, so now I see what's the fear about, right? Now I'm in the parts layer. Like, what is it actually fearful of? Oh, it's like, well, if I went out and I did this thing, I might get rejected or people might think I'm stupid. Oh, okay, so this part of me is protecting me. So now I see this crazy way that me avoiding doing this thing and going to get fast food is a way of protecting myself from like humiliation. That's kind of crazy. But now I can actually see what's going on. Okay, well, like, why can't I go out and do this now? Well, it's because I don't have the capacity to. Like, my social skills are not there. I feel really socially anxious when I get around people. So there's an undeveloped capacity. Now we see that has to be solved. And why are we doing it? Because it's in service of a larger orientation towards life. Because I want to become the kind of man who is capable of this. I want to grow and expand into who I could be, right? The spiritual layer is what drives the system forward, right? And also provides us the easiest way to tell direction, right? Is what I'm about to do going to expand or contract me? Will it energize me or will it deplete me of energy? Now I can see like, oh yeah, if I go get fast food, it makes me feel like shit. That generates negative emotion and it makes my life smaller. It depletes me of energy and it shrinks me. So that is an anti-spiritual thing to do. I'm engaging with the energy of death, literally. What could I do that would engage me with the energy of life, of expanding, right? This is what, again, why I say the king stands in the spiritual layer in order to get a vision on where to go. We want to get in the practice of looking at things through this layer in order to get clarity, right? That's where clarity is found in terms of which direction to go from. Okay, so that's how it shakes hands in the other direction, but moving from the top to the bottom, right? We also have a spiritual orientation. Maybe I'm standing here saying like, I'm setting my goals for 2026. I want to become a man this year, more of a man this year that is giving life and creating a beautiful future for myself and the people I care about. Okay, well, what capacities in me are going to be required for me to do that effectively? Now the spiritual shakes hands with the developmental, right? Now we're living in the developmental layer of like, okay, well, in order to make, I don't know, maybe my goal is like 30K a month. I'm going to have to develop the business skills in order to do that. Sales, marketing, content creation, etc. Okay, well, which one of those is like deficient? Maybe it's the content creation. And then this is sort of obviously a very personal thing, but just given the world that I live in, but it's like, okay, now I'm going to try to go do it. And all of a sudden I find that like, I can't sit down and record a YouTube video. Why? I'm getting like all this resistance behind doing it. And it's like, oh, because there's a protective part that is active that doesn't want me to put myself out there and get rejected or humiliated or judged negatively, etc. Okay, so now I need to move into the parts-based layer and allow this protective part of me, work with this protective part of me so that it can relax. Now I can actually do the thing which allows a need to be met for purpose, for growth, for fulfillment, all that stuff, right? And now it's going to manifest in my life as naturally life-giving behavior, right? Now I'm actually sitting there and recording the thing, which is maybe if you look in your outer circle, in the practical layer, you were like creative projects was something you had there. And now you're actually doing it in a practical way, right? So both of these, the 5 layers allow you to flow from top to bottom and from bottom to top, right? And to be able to see like, where do you get stuck? So that's the last thing here. I was just looking at the time. I'm gonna drop a message in Slack really quick. We'll start the weekly planning here in just a minute. Oops. Okay. Right. So what happens now if we skip the layers? If each one of these layers in our recovery, if one of them fails to get it to be addressed, right? If we skip the behavioral layer, this would be somebody who's like out in, normie land, has never done a program of recovery or person. They're not like, they're totally just like living the blur. They're vibing. Their life is just vibes. They don't understand. They maybe understand that addiction is a problem. Like they've been struggling with it for 10 years. Like this was me before I got into recovery, but they cannot translate insight of the fact that they have a problem into any kind of meaningful action. There's zero connection between what I do and the outcomes it's creating in my life, right? Their only strategy that they have is white knuckling, willpower, and resistance. So the maximum amount of sobriety that that I've seen people achieve based on this strategy is somewhere between 0 and 2 months. Rarely do people go any further than 2 months if all they're doing is just kind of resisting a system of larger dysfunction. Then if we get down, we say we do the behavioral layer, but we fail to address the needs-based layer, right? Then what we end up with is just the behavior swapping. We have rules without reason. We develop recovery becomes a prison of shoulds and brittle compliance that will break under pressure. Recovery will become habit optimization. It's still white knuckling. It's still willpower. It's just now, instead of fighting against the addiction with willpower, I'm going to try to like hold together these 72 things each week that I'm supposed to be doing in the form of a schedule in order to keep myself sufficiently distracted and sober, right? And the most that I've seen anybody, go with that kind of strategy is like 2 to 5 months. Eventually it will cave. If you get the behavioral and the needs, but you skip the parts-based layer, you will chronically self-sabotage despite having full awareness. You will be so self-aware and still so stuck, right? The change-resistant middle circle patterns that will persist for months or for years and will continually take you out despite your awareness that it's a problem. You will watch the slow car crash happen as you destroy a relationship again, or as you do something again that undermines you. And it's because we have not addressed the inner conflict element, that there's parts inside of us that they find whatever we're doing to meet a need intolerably dangerous. And the protection mechanism they have looks like externally self-sabotage. So the most I've seen anybody make it without addressing the parts-based layer is about 5 to 8 months. They will start having serious problems in 5 to 8 months, typically with self-destroying relationships and stuff like that. Or old behavior patterns will come forward, like nice guy syndrome, super anxious relationships, or being all avoidant and like they're not healthy yet. They may be sober, but they have not done the inner work of healing and transforming their internal world. If that layer gets skipped, or it gets accomplished, but then the developmental gets skipped, right? We will be comfortably stagnated. We may have addressed some of the inner conflict, offloaded some of the burdens of our exiles, right? Healed some of our trauma, but we're still unable to create the results in our life that we desire. You may now feel like you're a worthwhile and worthy person, but you're not able to get on a sales call and actually close somebody to become a client of yours, or you're not able to go out into the world and create a healthy relationship. You're not able to navigate conflict in a way that doesn't destroy a relationship you have with somebody, right? So without developing these capacities, people will inevitably fail to produce the results in their life that they desire, which will bring them right back to damaged parts, unmet needs, negative emotion, and middle circle behavior patterns. It will like cascade back down the layers, right? Most I've ever seen somebody stay sober when this layer is not addressed is around the 8 to 12 months mark. The spiritual, although it comes at the deepest layer, is something we begin, engaging with very early on. This is the integrating layer, meaning it's not like separate from all of these. It flows through all of them. If we neglect the spiritual, we end up with what feels like technique, but without any meaning. Our life, the stuff we're doing, our recovery, it feels empty without purpose. And we experience recovery as unsustainable effort. And the most that I've seen anybody go without connecting and resolving the spiritual layer of their recovery in a deep way is about 3 to 6 months. So, okay, this is where we'll stop for now, but I hope you guys can sort of see that like these layers of our 3 circles, each one is vital. It grants us a unique kind of agency in our recovery. And if we fail to address each of these layers, it will cause problems that will cause problems. They will flow back through the system. And this is how we end up in like 5 months in, and we end up having a relapse. It was like some deeper part of our recovery was not being addressed. And Lib, to actually answer your question now from yesterday in a more comprehensive way, when you were saying that like you don't feel like you've gone deep enough to heal the roots of your addiction, this is what deep looks like. This is where the roots of your addiction are lying. Right. They're on each layer of this, which is also why this sort of like, let me do it on my own search is oftentimes so unsuccessful. Why people end up in 12-step groups for 6, 8 years and they're still acting out, like chronic relapsing. It's because they have not, like, they don't understand the layer of who they are where the problem actually lies. And so they can't address it, right? This is how we begin to identify what layer of who I am does this problem exist on, so I can actually go and solve it. And when we get this picture, it grants us the ability to stop getting stuck ever. No longer will we fail to be able to, will we lack vision or understanding of what layer of who we are does a problem exist on and what is required of us to solve it. But we can't skip any of these layers.
So in the beginning, you said, is that what you meant in the beginning? That like we have to, that's why having the right outer circle activities that hit the right emotional needs are important, because you could be doing things that aren't hitting the particular needs you need to be, that you could be doing things that aren't hitting the particular needs that need to be met. And that very thing is what's keeping you in addiction, because you're not really hitting the emotional needs. You're just putting activities in your bucket just to do. Does that make sense? That's what you...
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, it goes in both ways, right? So for example, if you are lacking purpose, if your life feels empty, if recovery feels like unsustainable effort, and then what you're trying to do is just like go exercise more, it's like, is exercising bad? No, but clearly the need that is unmet is not like a health need of a lack of exercise or fitness. So, right, without this understanding or this connection of our outer circle to needs that are unmet, we'll just throw shit at the wall and hope to like see what sticks, but just completely fail to connect what we're doing to the actual problem. Like if my life feels like, using this framework here, right? If I feel like my recovery is all technique with no meaning, my life feels empty without purpose, and recovery starts to feel like unsustainable effort, which layer of my three circles does the problem lay on? It's the spiritual. I have a spiritual need that is unmet. This would be a transcendent need or a purpose level. So what am I doing over the course of my week that engages my outer circle in a spiritual way? If the answer is nothing, right, then you have a problem, because you're going to deprive yourself of meeting one of your most importants, in which case, like, there's no amount of exercising that's going to make your life feel meaningful, right? But that also works in the other direction, right? Where then we get spiritual bypassing, where somebody's eating like shit, they're not exercising, their sleep schedule's fucked. They have their life is just marked by the negative emotion from totally abandoning their like physical needs for health as a person, their safety needs. And then they're out there like trying to meditate or thinking like, oh, I just need more self-awareness into my patterns. It's like, no, bro, you need to stop eating like shit and go to bed. That's the need that's actually being abandoned, right? So that would be called spiritual bypassing. If I'm trying to meditate my way out of a shitty diet, like we have to connect our needs to the emotions that they're actually generating. And this is, again, where recovery becomes purposeful and it stops becoming random, like throwing shit at the wall to hope to see what sticks. I look at the needs that I have and I begin to intentionally design my life and my week around what it would look like to be a healthy person who is meeting their needs in a reasonable way. And if I abandon a need, well, lo and behold, it's going to manifest as a lot of negative emotion, like instant. And we become sensitive to that. And that's a good thing. So again, it's like if I stop going to my 12-step meetings and I'm abandoning my recovery need, my spiritual needs that I get from my 12-step meetings, and I start to feel lonely or kind of irritable, like I'm just like, I'm like carrying around this kind of negative energy, right? That's a sign for me that I have a spiritual need for connection. It's like a spiritual connection need that is just totally abandoned. I stopped doing the thing that I need to do in order to meet that need. So yes, the result is negative emotion. That's how our bodies work. And this becomes the case more and more clearly as we stop engaging with addictions and other areas of our life too. So anything that's currently spoofing our emotional GPS, right? Which a big one for me, the biggest one for me over the last like year and a half or so has been caffeine, right? It's something which like it meets a need while abandoning others. And that's the problem with it for me. The problem or what we end up getting into, right, is if we're engaging in stuff that spoofs our emotions, we become disconnected from ourselves and we lose the ability to feel what is the actual unmet need. So I can actually go and meet it. Addictions undermine that process. They stop it from happening, right? And that's the problem. So addictions will lock in place a system of unmet needs. They will cover it like in scar tissue so that the wound is no longer visible, right? And that's its protective nature, but that also is what results in us becoming frozen people. Like connecting this again to something that I say, that if you've been in recovery in recovery, we will find that we tend to become emotionally frozen around the age at which our addiction began. Like we'll find that that I'm a 30-year-old man, but I behave like a 12-year-old in a relationship still. I still have this feeling of being like a 12-year-old, a teenager emotionally. Rejection like destroys me or something like that. Right. So that's actually like literally true, that if we began the addiction, it numbed us and it like wrapped this core self, these emotions, these authentic connection with who we are in scar tissue, right? In this cloud or haze of like firefighter foam to keep the fire from spreading and being felt, right? So we have to stop putting out the fire for a little bit and we have to let the scar tissue break down. We have to get sobriety so that our emotions can come back online and we can begin this process of feeling, identifying the need, and then actually meeting it.
Yo, Nate, I'm not even just saying this. This is probably like one of your like top 3 lectures in like the last year and a half I've known you. Probably like your top one. Like I think what you said about the like our emotional needs, like, and I hear so many people saying like, oh, men have like terrible, they don't really know their emotional needs. And I think women, I think that's like why a lot of people are struggling with dating too. I think women are better at it because they've just been over the couple of years just cultivated better than we have. Not saying they don't have their struggles, but I think a lot of the stuff you're saying is why so many men in like our age range, like my age range, are just struggling in life because people really don't know their emotional needs and they're just using other shit to like cover it up.
Totally. Yeah. It's why I say, and like when I introduce you guys to this model of recovery, when I say it's a connection deficiency disorder, hopefully this gives you a deeper understanding of like, what does that mean? Like, yes, people are utterly and totally disconnected from themselves. Totally. And addiction is the solution to a life of being disconnected. It's a broken web of connection. That's what drives the whole thing. It's not a willpower deficiency problem. Like no amount of going to the gym, pushing yourself harder, no amount of sitting there and resisting and fighting the urge is going to give you the skill and the ability to feel an emotion, identify a need, and then actually go meet it. Like, do you see how they're totally separate? There's no, like, again, it's this, like I said earlier, like there's no amount of jerking off that is ever going to like have a difficult conversation for me. It, like whatever we're doing to soothe is so far removed from the actual real world that there's no connection between them whatsoever. There's no amount of engaging with willpower and discipline which moves the needle at all when it comes to healing from addiction. Like they're separate. There's, again, like there's no amount of willpower is not the tool that helps you to build emotional literacy. It's not the tool. It's like, again, it doesn't work. So when we start to see this, and then for me at least, it just hits me so painfully clear. It's like there's no amount of willpower and discipline that can solve this problem. No amount. It's not a willpower problem. And that's where most people stay stuck. And they just live for years thinking that they just have to learn how to say no better. And then this entire like iceberg of emotional roots that we talked about, it just gets completely ignored. Like, do you see how insane that is now? Do you see how insane it is to sit there and think that like, I just need to learn how to say no better? As we just walked through like how all this stuff shakes hands and what the system actually looks like that creates addiction as an output, it's utter insanity. And it's nobody's fault, right? Like there was nobody around any of us to teach us this stuff before we got into this program. Most of us didn't have fathers or mothers who were emotionally literate themselves and could actually teach us like, hey, when you feel something, it's because it's trying to tell you something is wrong. Like this is how you process your emotions and this is how you become capable of like, you know, identifying what needs to happen and then actually going and doing it. It's so elementary as to be stupefyingly obvious when we hear it. It's painfully obvious when I lay it out. Like emotions are not random. They're trying to tell you something, and negative emotions are trying to tell you that you have an unmet need that needs to go get met. Like that's, you could explain that to a 4-year-old. And yet it's something that we never had pointed out to us or explained to us in a way that enabled us to do it. And the outcome is this like emotional blindness where the only option for our internal world, for our system, is just, again, wrap it in scar tissue and throw it as far away into the back room as possible. So yeah, this is the process of recovery where I was talking about like healing your connection with yourself. This is it. This is what it looks like. Reconnect to the emotions that you've been numbing and abandoning and escaping. Resolve the conflicts inside of you that are preventing you from meeting the needs that you have. Develop the capacities to actually meet the needs, and then surrender them in service of a larger orientation towards a life that is moving in the direction of energization, of expansion, of greater aliveness, of greater potential, of growth, right? Of life rather than decay and death. All right, guys. So this is the three circles overview.
Dude, I want to echo what Lib said. This was a phenomenal lecture, and I feel like it spoke directly to the period of recovery that I'm in right now. I what you said about the 5 to 8 months being the typical time limit that you see for people who are not connected to their spiritual purpose and essence. I mean, I hit that wall like almost exactly at 5 months, and I really struggled to get past it because I didn't know how, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I ended up reverting back to old patterns. But thanks, man. Thanks for doing this. Like as always, this was really, really great.